Welcome, people, welcome. I know it's been a couple days since I posted. If you can't tell, I got some congestion going on. I'm recovering from a little bit of a sickness that they say is going around. Not too worried about it. I don't think I have anything too serious to worry about. Just kind of more or less been worrying about everybody else that's around me, kind of staying out of their way. And that's why I haven't posted as many videos as I have been lately. I haven't been feeling the greatest and been feeling a little under the weather. Since I think I'm starting to round a corner on how I'm feeling, I decided I'd just go ahead and make a video because I felt up to it enough to do it. I'll probably try and run through it because I don't feel great, but I feel well enough to do a video. It seems like the weather's getting nicer out, or it's going to be nicer for the next week or so. So maybe next video I post will be outside. I'll do a little walk and talk outside the property, and we can have the scenery as our background, not inside my basement. Anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this stuff. So the first story I have for you guys is they're talking about a ban on meat production. And the article I'm going to be putting up on this video, I'm going to read it for you here, but I'm going to be putting this article up on the screen as well. It says meat production to be banned. Meat is responsible for 57% of emissions from food production, according to research published by Nature Foods. And with countries across the world having made net zero commitments, Saxo says it is possible at least one country could cut out meat production entirely. One nation looking to front run others on its climate credentials may decide to heavily tax meat from 2025 and could ban all domestically produced live animal sourced meat entirely by 2030. I wouldn't be surprised to see schools in Denmark and Sweden banning meat altogether. It's definitely going that way, Saxo's Jago Besson told CNBC. It sounds crazy for us old people, he added. The UK, countries in the European Union, Japan, and Canada are among nations with legally binding net zero pledges. Okay, so let's see. I mean, I don't think that they explicitly say what country it is that is the one country that is for sure banning meat production by 2030 and is starting to cut meat production. But I found another interesting article, and this was published on December 21st, 2022. And I'm going to be putting it up on the screen as well. And it says, world's biggest cultivated meat factory is being built in the U.S. It'll be able to produce 22 million pounds of cultivated meat annually. Israeli startup Believer Meats has begun construction on the world's biggest cultivated meat factory. And once it's up and running, the US-based facility will be able to produce at least 22 million pounds of meat annually. The challenge: cultivated meat is produced by combining muscle cells extracted from living animals with substances that help the cells grow. The mixture is then placed inside a machine called a bioreactor, which provides the ideal conditions for the cells to multiply. Because cultivated meat is molecularly identical to the kind that comes from whole animals, it has the same flavor. That means it could allow us to stop raising and slaughtering animals for meat, which is both bad for the environment and arguably unethical, without giving up the taste of burgers and chicken. For cultivated meat to have any real impact on the meat industry, though, the companies making it need to get costs down. That typically means scaling up production, and right now, many startups are still only producing their lab-grown meat in very small batches. That's exactly what cultivated meat is. If people aren't understanding what I'm reading right now, is that's exactly what lab-grown meat is cultivated meat. In case this article is not making it clear, it's saying that lab grown meat is cultivated meat, and cultivated meat is the meat that they plan on using to replace regular meat. It's not that I'm completely against uh, the idea of not slaughtering so many animals, because I know that there's a, a huge human population. So undoubtedly, there is a lot of animals being killed by it has to be billions, definitely hundreds of millions every day. And it's pretty sad to think about. And meat is an essential part of the human diet. As much as people want to try and steer you away from that, meat is an essential part of the human diet, and it's been a part of our human diet since biblical times. In the Old Testament, you can read about how that's the main source of their, besides the manna and sent down to his people for them to be able to eat and have in the desert whenever they were starving. It's really meat that kind of kept everybody going, and was the main source of the nutrients that people got was through meat. So I do agree that meat is essential in the human diet. It's just hard for me to think that lab grown meat, or putting our trust in people, putting our trust in scientists instead of farmers. I'm not putting any of my trust into scientists. I never really did in the first place, but I definitely am not nowadays. So I'll do a quick pass on that. But it's just something to think about. It's something to maybe read more into. I have all this information, as of course always, linked in the description for you guys if you want to check it out. So if you want to read more about it, I'll put up other screenshots that I had on this topic for you guys to read as I went along with it. So the next thing I want to talk about is weather modification. I think that this is an interesting topic because it's really seen as a complete conspiracy, and that it's not actually something that is legitimate. But if you look around at certain articles, and I'll try and pull them up, is like there's a lot of countries that are working on these kind of technologies with they're saying that they're working on these kind of technologies, but the in all reality the truth is that they have this technology already. They're not working on it. They're not working on trying to develop it. They've already developed it. The only thing that they're working on is to make it perfected, to completely take over God's plan, to completely take over God's earth and everything that he has in natural balance. They want to control it. They don't want the weather to be natural. Much like everything else, they don't want anything on God's earth to be natural. They want to control it. So they're not working on weather modification. They already have weather modification technology. HAARP is a very good program to look into. They have that station up in Alaska. Just to read into it and kind of do your own research on it, because that's what I encourage on this channel is doing your own research. Don't ever take what I say as truth or fact, or anything that you hear off of anybody as truth or fact. I really encourage just doing your own research. The thing about this weather modification is, doesn't it seem strange that in the United States that we had some of the most frigid and freezing temperatures that we've ever had in the United States? I remember, there was times where we've had those kind of temperatures, but not that extreme, I don't think, and not for that long of a period of time in several areas. I mean, down in Florida, there was areas that it was getting down into like 30 degrees, like low 40s, high 30s in places like Orlando, Florida, and then Tallahassee was like 20 some degrees. And I mean, you're saying, oh, upper part of Florida, but still, it's just like that's intense cold. And in Miami, it didn't get much higher than the 50s for a high. So that's talking some very cold weather. And it was here where I was, which is up in the north, like the Ohio Valley region. Is It was in the negatives. It was -8 to -9 those couple days from Friday to Saturday, which was the 23rd through Christmas Eve on the Christmas day, it was just like, it was so freezing cold. And now they're saying that the temperatures are going to go back up to the 50s and the 60s. And I mean, I think when they do things like weather modification, when they cloud seed, whenever they try and modify the temperatures, and that these temperatures are driven out of nowhere, it just like it took such a deep drop in temperature, right? It went from like, okay, it's cold, it's winter, normal winter temperatures like 30s, 20s, things like that, all of a sudden plummets. Usually those kind of plummets don't come until mid January, late January, early February. Those are when those plummets happen, and they're not even that big of a plummet. They might get into single digits, but they're not into the negatives for a regular temperature, not just a wind chill, for a regular temperature. So I thought it was really strange that it took that big of a plunge, and now we're rebounding, is what they kept saying on the news, is how we're going to rebound. Well, I don't think that's a normal thing for it to rebound unless the cycle of the weather was messed with. The cycle of the weather was manipulated in some kind of way for it to forcefully rebound itself into a natural state, because it's obviously not supposed to be as cold as it was, and it plunged, and now it's rebounding to 50, to high 40s, to 50s, to almost 60s, or probably some days will be 60s. So it's rebounding to that after being -9 degrees. I mean, I'm just using my conspiracy theorist white cis male brain here, but something's not sounding right here. Something's not feeling right about that. I'm just saying. I think that if you give any kind of clear cognitive linear logical thinking to this, that the weather modification over this storm that we just had seems perfectly rational, because it is not normal for temperatures to be in the negatives and then within a week's time to be back up into the 50s and 60s, where it's not actually regionally normal for it to be into the 50s or 60s. Here where I live, it's not normal for it to be in the 50s or 60s come January or end of December. But since there was already not normal temperatures for the plunging that took place, now it's rebounding to extreme temperatures that are not usually seen in late December, early January. And so it's bouncing up to a degree where it's not normal, where it's not usually the case, like 60 degrees. So I just thought that was interesting to bring up. I think it's nice to get people thinking about what could be happening here, what they might be having to do with our weather to screw us up and knock people's power out and cause a bunch of death and destruction, amongst other things that our government would love to do to us. So just get to thinking that this weather stuff, it can be controlled, and that's probably what this whole cyclone bomb was, or winter cyclone bomb, whatever they called it, was a weather manipulation event, because that's what I was thinking this whole entire time, especially when I saw the temperatures were going to go back up to the high 40s, 50s, and 60s. That's just a telltale sign that something wasn't right to begin with. Anyway, let's move on. So I just caught this small little short video. I have it linked in the description for you guys. SWAT robot dogs. Yep, SWAT robot dogs. So no longer will they have no longer will they be having regular SWAT teams.
They finna go take that dog in there and finna go pop his ass. Look at that. 2022, dog. 23 now. That's what they doing now. They bringing robot dogs into the house. Gonna pop your ass with no feelings.
They'll just smoke you, and they don't care anything about it. They don't know of any human emotion or human attachment to it. Not to say that, I mean, most of our law enforcement nowadays seem like they kind of operate that way anyway, but this completely takes the human element out of these situations now, where it's literally just artificial intelligence technology. Maybe it's being controlled by somebody behind a screen or something, like a drone or something like that. I'm not sure. But either way, they're having uh, mostly artificial intelligence coming on here and doing the dirty work for law enforcement and whoever else. I'll say if I ever see one of these SWAT robo dogs coming near my house, I'm unloading. I'm not thinking twice about it. I'm not gonna think it's cool. I'm not gonna think it's something to gawk at or be like, wow, how cool our society has advanced to create these kind of things. Nope, I'm lighting it up. That's just the way it is. So yeah, I just wanted to show that this technology is out here. If they can make robo dogs, they can manipulate the weather, and that they can make meat in labs, what else can they do? Just think about it. Just really think about it. Okay? If you think all this is bullcrap, all this is stuff that has already been done. This is stuff that's already been out in the news. It has been out in the news that China manipulates the weather. Of course, it's China. They don't say that the United States really does this because they don't want you to think our government's bad. That we can't possibly be like the Chinese government. Okay, whatever. But all this stuff has been already announced in the news that this is what they're doing. Like, it's not hidden from you. So if this is stuff they're willing to admit, just imagine the stuff they're not willing to admit, that they're not willing to show, that they're not willing to put in the news yet. It's going to get crazier. And there's going to be stuff that you're going to see pop up that you never thought you'd ever hear in your lifetime, that you never thought was ever even possible. But it's going to happen. With that, we're going to go for a little bit of hope. We're going to go to the verse of the day. So the verse of the day is 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. For God, and I put underneath God Yah, because some people like to say that Yahweh is what you should say. You should say Yahweh instead of God. You should say Yahshua instead of Jesus. I'm not really a stickler for it, but to please people, I will put God and Yah, and I will put Jesus and Yahshua whenever referring to God and Jesus. So this way, people can look at this and read it however they feel. So, for God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Just a great verse to keep in mind with, God didn't give us the spirit of fear, and God doesn't give us spirits of fear. The spirit fears come from us, and they come from Satan, because the spirits of fear are meant to drag you down. They're meant to weigh you down. They're meant to encourage you not to further yourself, not to lift up that spiritual light inside of you. Like, you get lighter when you're closer to God. The fear weighs you down. It's at a lower frequency, and it tears you down and always keeps you paranoid and looking around, and it keeps you from fully embracing the God's creation and moving through life appreciating what God's doing for us and what Jesus did for us on the cross. So it's important to remember that the spirits of fear, they don't come from God. He didn't give us. It even says right here, hath not given us the spirit of fear. So God is not responsible for our fear. He gives us power, and he gives us love and sound mind. He gives us all the tools that we need to pull through these situations. He gives us all the tools to fight against these devil and demonic Satan forces that are coming against us, that want to use all these technologies to hurt us, that want to divide us and conquer us. Those are the spirits that he wants us to fight against. He wants us to fight against that fear and stand up for one another, and stand up for our brothers and sisters in Christ, and do the next right thing, because it's hard. It's not easy to do the right thing. If it was easy to do the right thing, everybody do the right thing all the time, and we know in today's world that doesn't happen. And I know that I can speak for myself that I've definitely not done all of the right things in my life. I've not done a lot of right in my life either. So I know that God is not to blame for any of my faults. It's purely my decisions and my actions that come from my spirits, not just of the spirit of fear, but the spirit of selfishness and greed and whatever other kind of spirit you could put in there that is not a God-given spiritual trait. It's a devil's spiritual trait. When we all have fallen prey to sin and to Satan's deception in some form or another. And it's not shameful to admit that. And God knows this. If God didn't know this, then we wouldn't be saved. He wouldn't have sent Jesus, his only son, down to the cross to die for us to grant us salvation. We were born into bondage and sin. So we were already born into a fallen world, into a fallen species. God has already known this. So what did he do to save us and give us the chance to obtain eternal life through Jesus Christ? He sent his one and only son in human form to die on the cross for us, to grant us salvation for eternity and give us eternal life from the eternal death and bondage and damnation we were born into. So this is just an important verse to remember. If you're ever feeling like your fear is getting the best of you, that your fear, like, ask God why you're so afraid. Just know it's not God that gave it to you, and God has more power than Satan does. Believe that. So anytime you're feeling this kind of fear, just pray to God, pray to Yah, ask him, take this fear away from me. I know that this is not a spirit that you've given me, and I know this is spirits of Satan that are trying to scare me into doing something I wouldn't normally do, or to believe something I wouldn't normally believe. Help me fight this. Help me fight this, Lord. Help me fight this. All right. Well, that's all I got today. If anybody actually stayed and watched, thank you. I hope to be putting more videos out. Hopefully I start feeling better, like I said, whenever the weather's nice and we can go out and actually walk around and talk and make a video outside while it's nice out. So thank you if you stayed and watched. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was informative. Please, as always, look after each other. Take care of each other. Pray for each other. Let's keep fighting this battle. Let's not be afraid of these demons in charge. They're not as powerful as we are, being children and spirits of God. We are here to uplift. We are here to do what is right. And that doesn't mean we're perfect, but we will keep trying to do the right thing. I love you all. I hope you have a blessed and wonderful new year. And as always, go in peace.